Okay, we are going to call this Tuesday, May 5th City Council meeting to order. If the clerk will please call the roll.
Councilmember Amy Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Roisin O'Farrell.
Here.
Mayor Josh Amato.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Councilmember Michael Boyer.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Debbie Treen.
Here.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
She emailed in and she's excused. Okay, Deputy Mayor, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember O'Farrell, will you please read the land acknowledgement statement?
Happy to. We acknowledge that we are on the Indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, with that, we will move to public comment. Each commenter has 3 minutes to speak. When you get up to the podium, please state your name and your city of residence. At the 3-minute mark, I'll start to talk you down, and I'll call 3 people up at once. First, we have Amy McComber, then Martin Bunat, and Fonda Bunat.
Hello, my name's Amy McComber, and I can't believe I'm back here again because the blocked road near the Tamarack needs to be let free. We have had so many projects around there and things happening, and for simply tech connectivity and for safety, there's a lot of reasons why we need to have that blockage removed. It's just, I have never heard one single reason why it should be there. Never. One. Not one. I realize that the people who are adjacent to it, right next to it, are lawyers, and that shouldn't scare people from having connectivity in a city. We're looking at probably another year of construction going on near Thompson Road again. And for me and for my autistic son, who is twice my size and a sweetheart, but he has seizure disorder and he has huge migraines that can hit. And when he needs to get home, I got to get him there. And I cannot figure out why we can't have the roads open that have been open ever since I have lived there. And I've lived in there a lot longer than a lot of other people, for like 30 years. But it is not fair to me, it's not fair to him, it's not fair to our neighborhood, and I don't know why it's not handled. I don't know why you guys don't step in and make this right. Because just a few months ago, my son had an episode. I was in the car. They had stopped me. And I tried and I tried and I tried to keep him in there, but I had to remove him from the car and I had to walk him. And all the construction people were just like, oh, can you exercise some patience? I was like, he doesn't understand this. He doesn't understand this. And I had to walk past them. And all I would need to do is drive down a road that has been platted since the 60s or maybe even earlier and drive my son home. And why is that such a problem? Why do people feel the need to put up stuff and block a road, block a fire hydrant? I don't understand it. I would love to hear one single person give me an idea of why this is okay. It is really problematic. And I'm kind of up to my eyeballs with it because you just don't understand what it's like for me and for my neighbors. So please, please address this issue and don't let some people that happen to be a lawyer dictate something that is not fair. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. I will say that we do have 2 public hearings tonight, so if you're here to speak on one of those, either related to the Beaver Lake Management District or the fee schedule, you can save your comments to when we open those public hearings, and you'll have another moment. Okay, and then Martin Bunat. And after Martin, we have Fonda Bunat. And then Mary Wichter.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Martin Bunat, and I live on 211th Avenue, a part of the Tamarack neighborhood, and I'm here today to urge you to remove the blocks that have been placed on the road connected to our neighborhood, a road that is privately owned by our neighborhood. At its core, this issue is about rights and reasonable use of our own space. This road exists as part of our neighborhood. It is not distant or unrelated property. It directly serves the residents who live here. Restricting access to it, especially through physical blockades, limits our ability to move freely, safely, and efficiently within the place we call home. Whether walking, biking, or driving, we have a reasonable expectation to use the infrastructure connected to our own street without unnecessary limitations. We especially should not feel like we are being prevented from using our own privately owned street. Residents should not feel like they are being pushed out of spaces that belong to them, and they should absolutely not feel threatened in their own neighborhoods. On October 2nd of 2025, I was riding my electric bike on that street with the fence when a truck began to chase me with the clear intention of hitting me. The chase quickly escalated to 40 miles an hour, which may have been fatal if the truck had collided with me or if I had fallen. This is not an isolated incident, as I have been verbally harassed and threatened several times when passing through that part of my neighborhood. Now, this is relevant because before that fence was up, our neighborhood had never had any issues with hostility. However, now that the fence is up, neighbors on that street are treating it like it is a special right given to them and that they must defend it, even going as far to nearly cause a catastrophic incident. Neighbors on that street with the blocks have a key which allows them access to pass through as they please. However, that key was not distributed to other individuals with equal ownership over that road. That fence is not serving as just a barrier to prevent vehicles from passing through. It is being used as a special privilege which others who live on that property are not given. I, myself, am a sophomore at Eastlake High School. Before that barrier was up, my sister was able to get to school in less than 4 minutes. That time is now tripled. And it's not just me who could benefit from the removal of the blocks, but also other several students from both Eastlake and Margaret Mead that want to get to school on time, as well as first responders who could potentially cut their response time by several minutes. Removing the blocks would restore clarity. It would affirm the residents that have the right to use the space connected to their own neighborhood. And it would help ensure that everyone, pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers alike, can move through the area without unnecessary limitations. This is not about asking for special treatment. It's about restoring fair and reasonable access to something that already belongs to us. I respectfully ask you to remove the fence and blocks and help return our neighborhood to a space that feels shared, accessible, and safe for everyone who lives there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Fonda, then Mary, and then Matt Wood.
Good afternoon. My name is Fonda Bunyat. Me and my family are living on Tamarack on 211th Avenue Northeast. We moved to our neighborhood in 2007, and since the beginning, we all were using 210th Avenue Northeast and Northeast 6th Street, like everyone else, to get to schools or Sammamish Plateau. Meanwhile, they started construction on Northeast 6th Street, building 4 houses. For a while, they let us drive through, but later, they blocked road using concrete blocks. We were hoping that after finish, it will be reopened. Instead, the people living there kept blocks and actually added fences and bollards, claiming that it's their own road. Since that, nobody can use it. My son was yelled at, threatened, and chased simply for driving his electric bike to school or to his activities multiple times. A couple of years ago, I experienced stroke. As you know, in stroke situation, every minute counts. Thank God that my ambulance came to my house from south direction and not from the north, where I would get stuck in that front of the blockage. That fence is not just simple fence, it's a metal with posts in solid concrete located next to fire hydrant. If I would park my car there, I would get ticketed and towed immediately. And lastly, our neighborhood is in the middle of the woods. If anything would happen, we cannot use that road as an escape road at all. We all saw what happened in California's fires a year ago, so it can happen again in our neighborhood. So, sorry. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Mary, followed by Matt, and then Jillian Wallace.
Hi, my name is Mary Richter. I've lived in Sammamish for 25 years, and all of that time I've lived in Tamarack. We have multiple roads. They're private roads. I don't think the city has ever understood that we actually have easements, so I've been collecting those. I sent 3 emails in today so you could see pictures and you could see some of the history. The problem is the road should be open. It never should have been closed. It's not okay to be closed. When you close the road, people cannot get access. Meade used to be a walking school, and you can actually walk that way and go right up to Meade, but when you can't, you end up going around an extra mile or 2 or 3. And Lewis Thompson, that project has been good. It's just going to need its final asphalt overlay, but you're going to have some stoppage there. And then recently you passed George Davis Creek. Well, that's just at Northeast 7th Court, which is just a little way, so cars queue up. They queue up all the way through the stoplight, and you can't even get out on Lewis Thompson, so you have to go uphill. Everybody in Tamarack is not going to use the north axis. In fact, if you do it quietly and well, people might not even know about it but we do need to use it. There are certain people, I think we've had special needs kids in our community every single year. There's a special bus that comes by, and people do need to be able to get back and forth to school. I remember recently in the city manager report, I can't remember the date, he said, hey, we had some trees down on Lewis Thompson, so it was closed going up and it was closed going down. And I just happened to hit the point where I could get out to actually get the meeting here. But if the back road, the north access to Tamarack had been open, I could go through there. So what's really annoying to me, you've heard me talk a lot about fire hydrants recently, because I don't think a fire hydrant should be blocked anywhere in the city. And the way that our code is if it's a private road, they won't do anything. And right now, the metal poles that are concreted in the ground that are a chain link fence, and yeah, it's a gate if you have the 2 or 3 key locks to get through, and it's not even 10 feet wide because I measured it. That structure is in the ground, and it's within 10.5 feet of a fire hydrant. And there is a Washington state law that says you're not supposed to park anywhere within 15 feet, but because our city doesn't deal with it in a private road, we're not doing that. But I don't care what the law is. We need that fire hydrant to be able to be used because I think there's like 600 feet between the other 2 fire hydrants. You can't really pump farther than I think 500 feet, and it just really needs to get dealt with. So the amount of distance of the road, I live in Tamarack, so I have a road below me, a road beside me, and a road above me. I help take care of those roads. The distance that the city needs to deal with is shorter than that. And the reason I'm saying the city is the city went and they bought the upper part of George Davis Creek. It's about 14 acres. It flows through, George Davis Creek flows through it, and it's Tamarack Tract A. And because of that, you own halfway into the road. So whether the city has constructed the barriers or whether people have, it's on land that you own, and it needs to change.
Thank you for your comments. Matt, and then Jillian, and then Swan Jacobson.
Hello, Council. My name is Matt Wood. I'm staff representative from AFSCME Council 2, and I'm here tonight representing the hardworking union members of the City of Sammamish who are proud members of AFSCME Council 2, Local 1425. And on behalf of more than 90% of our membership, who sign on to this letter, I'll read you the letter. As we approach the start of negotiations for our next collective bargaining agreement, we want to take the moment to do something that doesn't always happen at the bargaining table and lead with optimism. We are here tonight not to air grievances, but to extend a hand. Our members are committed to the city, committed to the residents they serve, and committed to working collaboratively with leadership and this council towards an agreement that reflects the value of public service. We believe good faith bargaining benefits everyone, the employees, the city, and the community as a whole. We enter this process, the union will be centering three priorities that we believe are not only reasonable but essential to long-term health of this organization. First, existing staff retention. The institutional knowledge, community relationships, dedication that our current employees bring cannot be easily replaced. Retaining experienced staff is not just a union priority, it's a fiscally responsible investment that in the continuity of the city services. Second, workplace culture. Our members love the work they do and deeply value the colleagues they work alongside every day. That sense of team and purpose is a genuine strength of this organization and is one worth protecting and building upon. We've been listening closely to our members, and we have data-backed insight into what's working well and where meaningful improvements can be made. We look forward to bringing that perspective to the table. And third, we are fully aware of the budget pressures the city is facing, and we want to be clear. Our union takes fiscal responsibility seriously. We understand that every dollar requires difficult decisions, and we're prepared to engage in honest, grounded conversation about what is sustainable. That said, we must be equally clear that competitive fair pay for our members remains a central priority and is essential to reaching an agreement our members will support. Compensation is not a line item to be balanced against other expenses. It's the foundation of competitive recruitment, retention, and morale. We believe a fiscally responsible agreement and a fair agreement are not mutually exclusive, and we're committed to finding that path together. We entered this bargaining cycle with good faith and genuine desire for outcomes that this city council, city leadership, and our members can be proud of. We ask the council that this council remain engaged in the process and supportive of a timely collaborative resolution. Thank you for your time. We look forward to working in partnership to negotiate a fair and equitable contract that benefits everyone in this city.
Thank you for your comments. Up next, Jillian, then Swan, and then Jan Bird.
Greetings, Jillian Wallace from the historic town of Inglewood. Yay for trees, bees, and flowers. Yay for Wednesday Farmers Market. And yay for Council Roshino Farrell and the quality to be able to be brave enough to go first and lead by example with kindness, empathy, and grace. In our house, we call it being a duck on a pond, having the outside appearance of calm and graceful, but under the water, those little legs are kicking. Inside, I may be totally panicking, but you can't tell from my outward-facing calm appearance. How do you appear to others? We here have the privilege of a safe and accessible platform to present, also have the unique opportunity to rewatch our presentation. Not just our words and our content, but our physical presentation. I'm rather good at hiding my flinch to loud, sudden noises like applause, but I've had a lifetime of heightened startle reflex and the physical pain it causes to be startled. Outside appearances doesn't tell you everything you need to know about others. You don't know why someone is passionate for their reasonings. You don't know why I use a walker or why I sit with my feet curled up. I hope this might shine a light on why I do this instead of this. Yay for everyone who exercises the privilege of public comment. I may not agree with your words, but I sure am glad that you're using them, because if we don't use our words and we don't use our voice, we can lose our voice. And yay for accounting for invisible differences in others. It is a form of equity and fosters understanding, grace, and empathy. Everyone is going through something. right now. Everyone has something that's sitting in the back of your mind that drives your response to something. And I honestly believe that not a single person in here wishes ill will on our Sammamish, on our community. So thank you for providing this safe and accessible platform so that I might use my voice for kindness, empathy, and respect for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Swan, then Jan, and then Courtney Sullivan.
Hello, City Council. My name is Swan, pronouns they, them, resident of 11 years. In a somewhat similar vein, I would briefly like to commend the City Council for their conduct at the conclusion of the April 21st meeting. Receiving behavioral feedback, especially from a peer and in an extremely public way, is not always easy, and the comfort and appreciation that every member of the Council expressed sent a message of good intention from the entire body. Whenever communication breaks down in any situation, as it has a few times during council meetings, it becomes imperative to find new ways to communicate and to clarify. As elected officials, there is, or at least there should be, even more pressure to improve communication because of the impact that your voice and your actions have. Now, it would be unfair to expect all of your conflicts to be resolved in one fell swoop, and to an extent, I think it's important that the members of the council have differing opinions and that they have the space to voice them. However, I hope to see the council carry this goodwill forward, both in terms of trusting good intentions and in being deserving of that trust. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for your comments. Jan, and then Courtney, and then Celia Wu.
Good evening. I'm Jan Bird from Sammamish, and I'm one of the Sammamish stewards. I'll give you a little background about one of the proclamations we're doing tonight. At our Earth Day event on April 25th, we celebrated the 15th anniversary of our city being certified as a community wildlife habitat with the National Wildlife Federation. This was a collaboration between the early Sammamish stewards and many other local residents, the city, and the National Wildlife Federation. And in honor of this anniversary, we wanted to elevate one of the programs we feel passionately about, which is gardening for wildlife. And we thank our city council for including a Garden for Wildlife proclamation at this evening's meeting. We're fortunate that our long-term local National Wildlife Federation colleague and Community Habitat Director, Courtney Sullivan, is able to join us tonight to talk about the program. Some of us have known Courtney for as many as 17 years, and it's been a great long partnership. Before Courtney speaks, I want to leave you with a thought. It can be very discouraging to see what is happening at the national level regarding environmental protections, but I heard a phrase this morning on the radio that stuck with me. No one can do everything, but everyone can do something. So I now want to introduce Courtney Sullivan, who will talk about the Garden for Wildlife program and how we can all do something. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Courtney is a registered speaker. If we could reset Courtney's time, please, to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Courtney Sullivan. I am fortunately not a lucky resident of Sammamish, but I have been lucky enough to celebrate with you here at previous city council meetings over the years for the 5 and the 10-year anniversary. So it's great to be back. To start, I want to say congratulations to Sammamish for 15 years as a certified community wildlife habitat with the National Wildlife Federation. Wildlife and humans can coexist. Community leaders such as yourselves are making the connection between healthy and sustainable human communities and wildlife conservation by issuing wildlife-friendly proclamations that promote resident engagement around wildlife conservation and habitat restoration. Proclamations are a valuable tool that local leaders have to set the standard for community values surrounding conservation and our connection to wildlife and the outdoors. National Wildlife Federation's Garden for Wildlife program is actually America's largest and longest running habitat movement dedicated to helping wildlife thrive where people live, work, play, learn, and worship for over 50 years. May is Garden for Wildlife Month, and that means it is the perfect time to celebrate your own garden and its amazing impact on local wildlife. We invite everyone in the room to join the 336 certified wildlife habitats in Sammamish, the over 13,000 certified wildlife habitats in Washington, and the over 335,000 across the U.S. Nationally, you can self-certify your garden with us during National Wildlife Month. Thank you, and again, congratulations, council members, on 15 years as a certified community with National Wildlife Federation. In closing, please join me with a big thank you to the local Habitat Steward volunteers. A few from your community Habitat team leaders are here tonight.
Thank you very much for your comments. Celia Wu.
Yep. And then Carrie Bosworth and Paul Stickney.
Celia Wu, Sammamish. I am back because I have not received a response, not from Councilmember Stewart, who made the false allegation that I violated First Amendment rights, and not from the city attorney, who dismissed a just and reasonable request from a constituent she is supposed to serve. Your packet tonight, which is in your inbox and submitted for the record, contains 2 documents. The first, which you are holding in front of you, is an email from Jeremy Cullenber, the city's defense counsel in the Kimsey lawsuit, who now serves as your ethics officer. He wrote to City Attorney Carrie Sand, quote, "Carrie, we have to chat along with Gordy at WCIA about the potential propriety for a malicious prosecution counterclaim, given the absence of any support for Kimsey's allegations." So, your current ethics officer, the city's own defense counsel in the Kimsey case, told this city attorney in writing that there was no support for Ms. Kimsey's allegations and proposed discussing a malicious prosecution counterclaim with the Washington City's Insurance Authority. Yet, Ms. Sand dismissed my formal demand for retraction of Councilmember Stewart's false statements as a, quote, so-called demand, writing that she was not aware of any special legal authority that I held, even though the city's own counsel in this case had told her in writing that Ms. Kimsey's allegations were unsupported. The same allegations Councilmember Stewart is now repeating. The second document, which is in your email, is my request for retraction served on Ms. Sarah House Kimsey. On page 6 of that document, Catherine Freudenberg, a co-plaintiff, wrote that, quote, "The employee that intentionally deleted the public records could have faced felony charges if the action was intentional, citing a state statute carrying imprisonment for not more than 10 years. Catherine Freudenberg publicly invoked a 10-year prison sentence in connection with me. That is the climate these false allegations created, and that Councilmember Stewart's false allegations continues to feed. I am a naturalized citizen. Like many of your constituents, I am an immigrant. False accusations of civil rights violations weaponized in this political climate, as Ms. Freudenberg has done, can have severe consequences. A sitting council member perpetuating this falsehood and a city attorney shielding it rather than correcting it are exposing the city to claims for the harms it has caused. I have proposed a very simple solution that the ethics officer, the same one who wrote to the city attorney that Ms. Kimsey's allegations were unsupported, issue a one-sentence statement to Councilmember Stewart and to the public record affirming that there was no ruling that I violated anyone's First Amendment rights.
Thank you for your comments. Carrie Bosworth, and then Paul Stickney.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Carrie Bosworth, resident of Sammamish for 8 years. From day one, I've heard residents talk about a community center. For a long time, I thought it was just a political argument. The Sammamish YMCA is incredibly popular. However, now that I visited community centers at other cities and heard from, like the people last week, the organizations that want to benefit from it, I now understand why everyone, including myself, do want a community center. I feel like Sammamish doesn't really have an identity, but we do have a lot of community. And through that community, if allowed to flourish in a space, we might find our true identity. At the last meeting, I was really disappointed how the topic of Building 120 went. Previously, you decided to skip the survey, and this was a project where the next step was to go out to the community and hear from us. Several groups were there that night as well. The very next step after choosing to go forward was to hear from you to get your ideas first. Instead, someone jumped the line and the others all piled on. I think with the exception of Councilmember Roisin O'Farrell and perhaps Mayor Amato. Perhaps that's leadership, but it didn't really feel like it. Instead, the project is going to be delayed and probably cost more, and it seems completely counter to what you're all trying to do, which is to run the city fiscally well. So I left feeling disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Paul, you're up next.
Good evening, City Council. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. I'm going to be talking a bit about the two things I've talked about over time, especially since impact fees have come back up, and that is the land use and the comp plan is tied to the impact fees. So I've been coming back to talk about why I think the comp plan should have a change before we deal with the impact fees. So now I'll talk about the comp plan, and during the impact fee side, I'll talk about that. I've come up with something. 5K plus A is okay. Now, the 5K is what I've been talking about in adding internal market rate housing, primarily from 500 to $1.4 million to meet our own internal needs, not needs for the region. The 2K is the affordable housing overlay of our, growth target. And I know there's a whole lot of discussion of how that may shake out. But if you read the comp plan, it says that all of the units are going to be affordable. And there's no discussion being forthright about having market rate housing as well. And I'm sort of going a little bit off script because I turned in the information today, and that's on the Civic Web if anybody wants to read it. But I would like to say I chose the color purple for the 5K because it is noble. It's regal. It is doing what's right for our community. And sometimes doing what's right is hard, especially when it's not self-evident and counterintuitive. But I'll speak to the fact that the internal needs for market rate housing at price points from 500 to $1.5 million over stages of life, and for a generational sustainability far outweigh market rate shortages. Hence, I'm doing 5K plus 2K, and the plus 2K is in orange because the lowest 0 to 30% is not easy. So that's almost a stop. There's going to be hard work in trying to figure out how to make that right. So all I will share is that I believe strongly that Sammamish can elevate its thrive and jive and thrill and delight by having housing supplies that don't help the region, but help people here that want to stay over time. So Martin Luther King said, the time is always right to do what's right. And I think we need to change the comp plan first before we do major land use items. I'll talk about impact fee next. Appreciate the chance to speak.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else in the room like to give public comment? And again, we'll have a chance for a public hearing, public comment at the time. Okay, seeing none. Do we have anyone online for pre-registered?
No one online.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And we have a couple proclamations. Councilmember Boyer, would you please read the Asian Pacific Heritage Month proclamation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Proclamation, Asian Pacific Heritage Month 2026, whereas the month of May is nationally recognized as AANHPI, Asian American Pacific Hawaiian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, commemorating the immigration of the first Japanese immigrants to U.S., as well as the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, in which Chinese immigrants made up about 90% of essential workers, and whereas Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders have profoundly shaped American culture and society, influencing everything from science and medicine to the arts, sports, politics, and law, and whereas the FAPAC, the Federal Asian Pacific American Council, announced the May 2026 AANHPI theme as Power in Unity, Strengthening Communities Together, highlighting the importance of harnessing collective strength through storytelling and being bridge builders, bringing communities together to rally around shared causes. And now, therefore, in celebration of the legacy and stories of resilience within the AANHPI community, and in support of efforts that promote connection, service, and shared learning, I, Josh Amato, as mayor of the city of Sammamish, hereby proclaim the month of May 2026 as Asian Pacific Heritage Month in the city of Sammamish, and encourage all residents to learn about the vibrant histories and achievements of AANHPI individuals and communities, and to reflect on and celebrate the many ways they have helped shape our shared history. And for your signature, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Treen, can you please read the Garden for Wildlife Month proclamation?
Garden for Wildlife Month 2026. Whereas Garden for Wildlife Month is a national initiative of the National Wildlife Federation that empowers citizens to support local wildlife by planting native plants in their garden and throughout the community to help restore and connect habitat. And whereas the city of Sammamish is working to build a healthy, sustainable, and wildlife-friendly community that brings many benefits of nature to all corners of our community by celebrating and maintaining 15 years of certification as a community wildlife habitat with the National Wildlife Federation. We've been 4 years as a bee city with Xerces Society and 2 years as a tree city with the Arbor Day Foundation. And whereas Sammamish recognizes that human health ultimately depends on the well-functioning ecosystems and that biodiversity regions can better support food production, healthy soil, air quality, fresh water, and clean water, and can foster healthy connections between humans and wildlife. Now, therefore, to celebrate Garden for Wildlife Month, I encourage residents to take part by certifying and maintaining their properties as wildlife habitats through the National Wildlife Federation. The city of Sammamish hereby proclaims the month of May 2026 as Garden for Wildlife Month. And in the city of Sammamish, we urge you and our residents to continue supporting local efforts that protect, restore, and conserve habitat and vital environmental resources, as well as foster a greater connection between residents and wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're going to pause and ask the Sammamish Community Wildlife members to please come forward. And we're going to grab a photo with the proclamation. Yeah,
This way, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Let me get one more.
The bees are crazy right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we are ready whenever you are.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. Audrey Starcy, Public Works Director for the record. I am joined this evening by Jen Rubinelli, Management Analyst in Public Works, and we're here tonight to discuss the Beaver Lake Management District renewal. We have many more meetings planned throughout the year. We do have a short presentation, and then we would ask that you open the public hearing this evening, and close the public hearing, as well as approve a resolution. So whenever you're ready, Jen, go ahead.
Good evening, Council. So for our brief presentation, we will be recapping the Beaver Lake Management District renewal. We'll go over the proposed resolution in front of you tonight. And then we'll talk about the next steps of this somewhat long process that is governed by state law. And then some staff recommendations, which Audrey kind of already covered. All right, so as a refresher, the Beaver Lake Management District, or BLMD, started in the 90s. Our current term ends on December 31st. This district operates on 10-year terms, so we are looking at the third renewal of the district. Renewing the district, we have to do it by state law. So on March 17th, I was here before you, and we kind of started that process. So we on March 17th, we talked to you about the proposed work plan for the next 10-year term, the budget, and then you adopted Resolution R2 2026-1139, and that was the first kind of kickoff step, if you will, for the process. So just as a reminder, the Beaver Lake Management District Advisory Board's recommendation is to renew, and there were over 200 property owners within the BLMD who signed the petition in favor of renewing. All right, so the proposed resolution tonight, it is required by law, and the purpose behind this resolution is calling for a vote from every property owner within the Beaver Lake Management District. So this vote would be conducted by the city. It is not associated with the King County Elections Office, and that is because it is only for property owners within that BLMD district, which is attachment B in your packet. And then only the votes received would be counted. So a non-responsive vote would not count towards the results. And we are required, this is kind of a funky thing, we are required to weight each vote based on the proposed assessment roll dollar amount. So for every lakefront owner, their ballot would be weighted by 320, which corresponds to the $320 they'd be paying per year. And then the non-lakefront owners would be weighted by 33, because that's $33 a year they'd be paying into the district. The simple majority of votes cast then would move our renewal process forward. So I mentioned the law. Just wanted to give you a quick overview of the steps that would follow tonight if the public hearing was conducted and the resolution were approved. So staff would send out ballots to every owner of land within the BLMD proposed boundary. We would report back the results of the simple majority, again, to you. If the votes cast were in favor, you would be asked to approve an ordinance. After that, we'd have another public hearing on the assessment roll, which is that funding piece. So that's the $320 and then $33 piece that we talked about. And then you would be asked to approve the assessment roll through another resolution. And then after that comes another ordinance. Each of these ordinances do require 2 readings. And our goal is to complete all of these steps by the end of the year to ensure a transition without any hiccups between the current BLMD and the next one. So you may see a lot more of me. All right. So the recommendations tonight are to open the public hearing, hear public testimony, close the public hearing tonight, and then approve the resolution. Any questions?
All right, council, any questions? Deputy Mayor.
I actually do have a question. How many individual properties are in the lakefront $320 versus the non-lakefront?
So I don't have that number right off the top of my head. However, if you do look at attachment B in your packet, we have designated the number of lakefront versus non-lakefront parcels in the legend of that map.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
So Pine Lake doesn't have a management district. How has Beaver Lake, what are some of the improvements that we see from Beaver Lake having BLMMD versus Pine Lake, which doesn't?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when the Beaver Lake Management District started, it was in the 90s, so it was entirely resident-driven at the time because the city had not incorporated. It is my understanding, from the Pine Lake Basin Plan work that was completed, that the Pine Lake residents were not unanimously in favor of pursuing a Pine Lake Management District. But to answer your question about the benefits Beaver Lake has seen, both lakes are included in the King County Lake Stewardship Program. However, Beaver Lake has consistently ranked as a better water quality on the county's sort of scoring system in that lake stewardship program. So they do release a report, I believe, every single year, and Beaver Lake has consistently ranked better, so their water quality is ranking healthier. I will say that the Beaver Lake Management District has done a really great job on working towards complete eradication of the invasive fragrant water lilies on the lake. There was also a very aggressive invasive identified in 2024 due to the more hands-on nature that the BLMD has King County doing when it comes to water quality monitoring. So if King County had not identified that invasive as quickly as they had, the cost of addressing it would have gone up exponentially because of how aggressive it's been seen in a couple other lakes in Washington. So those are just a couple examples. I'm happy to provide more detail as well. I think at the March 17th presentation, we did cover some of the more general accomplishments, though, of the BLMD.
Okay, that's great. We've just received, a few emails from homeowners within the watershed, BLMD watershed, who aren't supportive, mainly from an equity issue, less from like a health quality for the lake. But I think that there's a lot of people that just don't understand the benefits of BLMD. So thank you.
I see no other lights on, but I do have I have a question about the line drawing, and can that be adjusted after the fact? Like, not after the fact, like before we approve this. Can the lines for this district be updated?
I would look to our city attorney for that one.
So a lot of this process is governed by the Washington State law, Chapter 3661 of the RCW. And with regard to how the map is drawn, we are just following the historic way that's been done since the 1990s, as Jen was saying previously. So again, I think that is informed by the RCW, but we're being consistent with how it's been done in the past. And traditionally, the property owners that are actually adjacent to the lakefront and in that area are assessed a higher amount than the more outlying property owners within that particular district boundary. That's all I can say for now. I'd have to look at RCW 3661 to give a more exact answer.
Sure. It was just one of the questions we got. The other one I have a question about is the acceptance of payment. One concern was how challenging it was to make the payment, and I'm not in the district, so I don't know. Like, what can you speak to us a little bit about what that looks like?
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer on how to make the payment easier because RCW 3661 does require us to process payment, being our assessment roll fees, through the county treasury office. It is stated in the law that that must be done. So they are in control of that process for the billing. And they are the ones who have determined that it will be a separate mailing and a separate bill from a resident's standard property taxes.
Okay, perfect.
I think along those lines, so that is good feedback. We've received all the comments too, so we're happy to provide that feedback on King County.
That'd be great. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. I don't see any other lights on for any other council members. So seeing none, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. And we will start taking public comment. And if you did not write your name down, I will at the end call up anyone in the audience who would like to speak. First up, we have Mark Stendal.
Good evening, council members. Great to see you again. My name is Mark Stendal. I am the former president of the Beaver Lake Community Club and currently serve on the BLMD board. I brought a prop tonight, if you don't mind, if I can just show you here. Take a quick look at this. Are you looking? There will be a pop quiz coming. I'm warning you right now, okay? H2O. Yeah, you want to go to the second round here? Okay, we'll see. Thank you for taking a look at that. So, a little symbolism here. If this gallon of water that I brought here tonight represented all the water on the entire earth, how much of it...
Mark, I'm sorry. Can you please check that your mic is on?
Check.
Okay, thank you.
I will get closer here. Thank you. Let me start again then. Here is the question. If this gallon represented all the water on Earth, how much of it do you think is fresh water? Okay, we'll just pose the question. I've got the answer here for you, okay? You ready? About this much right here. What I'm looking at is less than a teaspoon. Earth's water here, teaspoon here. So this is what sustains our life. But what does this have to do with Beaver Lake? Everything. Clean water does not stay clean by accident. It takes stewardship. It takes vigilance. It takes a partnership. Over the years, I've seen firsthand what can happen when a neighborhood and a city work together for a common goal. The BLMD is one of the best examples that we have on the plateau of that kind of partnership. I especially want to acknowledge Jen Rubinelli and the city staff who work closely with our board. Their professionalism and their passion have helped protect one of Sammamish's greatest treasures. And for those that feel that $30 a year is too much to contribute, I would simply ask this question, to think beyond ourselves. Listen, we are the temporary stewards of something future generations will depend on. Our children, our grandchildren deserve clean lakes, healthy wetlands, and fresh water that sustains life. Are we willing to do something small to protect something irreplaceable? Renewing the BLMD is that step. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Up next, we have John. I'm going to ask the audience to please not clap. John Burdekin.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is John Burdikin. I've lived on the Plateau for 16 years, and I've served on the board for going on 10, so through 2 separate instantiations of the board. One of the questions that came up earlier is, what's the difference between Beaver Lake and some of the other lakes, specifically Pine Lake? So the money that is generated by the BLMD tax assessment is used to protect the lake. So, for example, when we determine there's an invasive species invading the lake, the city doesn't have to pay for it. It's already paid for through the BLMD. And we will go out and the BLMD addresses the invasion. With Pine Lake, for example, because there is no BLMD, you would have to go and find the money to address the situation out of budget. The BLMD creates a budget for us to sustain the lake. Now, as everybody else presented here, this lake has been here since the last ice age, 13,000 years, and the city grew up around it, and it is our job to protect it so that, as Mark indicated, future generations that live in this city can enjoy the environment of this great city. And it would be a tragedy for us not to continue the stewardship of this lake. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. That's the end of our pre-registered public comments. If anyone else in the audience would like to make public comment, please come up to the podium at this time. Mary, please. Thank you.
My name is Mary Wichter. I've been in Sammamish 25 years. I don't live on Beaver Lake, but I have read the things online and see the great map where it looks like a beaver with the pink and the blue around it. And I live between Zaccoose Creek and George Davis Creek, which are 2 salmon streams. I'm a watershed resident volunteer for the Kokanee Work Group. And when we first started learning about water quality testing, the city really wasn't doing any, and then they're testing the waters now, and those get posted up, and the reports are really pretty good. And from the Kokanee Work Group, I learned a lot about water quality, and then I also met some of the people like Dave Kyle, who does a lot of the work like they do in Beaver Lake Management District. And I haven't been to the meetings in person, but for a couple times I actually just attended by Zoom, and I found the meetings were really excellent. The people are super knowledgeable. The information is very relevant, and all their activities really honor the money that they take in. And I believe it is a small amount to pay for the value that you get. The question I would have is Beaver Lake, I believe on the bottom, they have a lot of sewer, and then on the top, that's where more of the septic is. And I know in 2016, when we updated the stormwater manual, they said that phosphorus was staying pretty level, and I don't know if that's still the case, but King County has about 85,000 septics. 65,000 of those will be failing, so even if you like your septic and you think it's great, they just don't last forever. So I don't know what Beaver Lake might be able to do with that, or if that's a problem, but that's one thing you could watch. But otherwise, I really support the program. I thought it was really innovative when I heard about it. I think the results and the operation have been great, and the people are fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the audience like to give public comment? Okay, seeing none. Council, are we okay to move forward out of the public hearing? Any concerns? Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing. And do we have a recommended motion for us? I did not see one in the agenda packet. Okay, Councilmember Lamb.
I motion to approve the resolution submitting the question of creating and renewing the Beaver Lake Management District to the owners of land within the proposed Beaver Lake Management District 1 by the City of Sammamish in the Beaver Lake watershed.
So, motion, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Lamb, would you like to speak to your motion?
I do not.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much for your work on this.
Thank you, Council.
Sounds good. All right, now we've got a public hearing to consider approving the impact fee study, amending the fee schedule, and adopting Sammamish Municipal Code sections 21.06.050. I'll give our team a moment to get situated.
All right, we are ready if you are, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please begin.
Okay, good evening. My name is Evan Fisher, Senior Management Analyst with Community Development, joined by Director David Pyle. And tonight we will be conducting a public hearing for our impact fee updates. Tonight's meeting objectives, first we'll go through a very brief presentation. I promise I will keep it short. We will confirm direction from the City Council on a couple items before we go and go through any questions you might have. Then we'll enter the public hearing and receive testimony before deliberation and voting on an ordinance and 2 resolutions. So just as a reminder, impact fees, what are they? They're a one-time charge the city may assess on new development to support expanding the systems to accommodate new growth and maintain our adopted levels of service. This is something that's spelled out in RCW 8202.050 through 110. The city sets and collects impact fees to support parks and transportation infrastructure. We also collect school impact fees, but we do so on behalf of the school districts. We don't set their fees. We're a pass-through entity. Why are we updating our impact fees? First and foremost, there was a change in state law that requires our impact fees scale with the size of development. Currently, we have a per unit fee, and we need to shift to something like a per square foot fee, which is what we're recommending and bringing forward to you all. Also, with the adoption of our updated comprehensive plan, it was a natural time to revisit impact fees anyway. So the project work focus, this project was ultimately about using existing data to develop a legally defensible methodology for calculating scaling parks and transportation impact fees to comply with state law. This project wasn't about amending our capital facility project lists or our levels of service. That work is done through other policy work at other times. Our impact fee study has produced new fee amounts. The key takeaways here are the impact fees per square foot. So with parks, we have a $3.13 impact fee, and transportation, $7.44. The consultant used occupancy data to set a minimum and maximum amount, but really those per square foot are kind of the key takeaways. These 2 charts to show where our current fees lie with our peer and neighboring cities, and then also how the updated calculated fees compare. At the last meeting on whatever date that was, we heard feedback from the council confirming largely what the commission had recommended. First was to assess 100% of the maximum calculated fees. The next was to reduce impact fees for affordable housing by 80% for a range of 0 to 60% AMI, and then by 50% for 61 to 80% AMI. We also removed the exemptions for accessory dwelling units per legal feedback that pointed out the city would be required to pay those impact fees because ADUs don't fall into an allowed exemption. And then the city will not put a limit on the number of deferrals offered to a single project proponent. There are 2 items that we wanted to confirm direction on. The first was additions. We talked about this just briefly with you all at the last meeting. And the question is, should additions continue to be listed as exempt from impact fees as they are in our draft code? And then second, should projects developed by public entities such as the city, school districts, or utilities be exempt from impact fees? Given that the city would be required to pay those assessed impact fees. Currently, we have those listed as an exemption in the draft code that's before you. legal pointed out that we should check with you if this is a policy decision you'd want to make, or if we should remove those as exemptions. Staff have provided recommendations. We believe it would be appropriate to exempt additions on existing structures from impact fees, but make clear that we would require payment of impact fees on the net square footage of any tear down and rebuild scenarios. And then we would recommend just removing public projects as exemptions, again, given the requirement that the city would be required to pay those impact fees. So the next steps following the public hearing would be to look at considering approving a resolution for the 2026 impact fee study, considering the adoption of a ordinance that would repeal our existing code sections and replace it with the new code section SMC 2106045, and then lastly, a resolution to amend the city's fee schedule to incorporate those new scaled impact fees. Yep. Next slide is just the recommended motion, and then I'll pause here for any questions the council might have.
Before we go to that, I would like to understand how you would like to receive clarity from us on those two questions that you asked.
Maybe just a round robin and a vote if we need.
They would ultimately be, excuse me, incorporated into, because those are code amendment items. They would be incorporated into the second part of the motion, which would be adoption of 21.06.045, the impact fees code section, which is an ordinance. So the first motion is related to a resolution. The second motion is related to an ordinance. The third motion is related to a resolution. So it would be necessarily related to the second motion, where you would say, as amended to, and then we could provide that language.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Hopefully that made sense.
It does. So you are not looking for just trying to, I think we got it. Okay. Any council member questions? Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I just have some questions around the discount for the affordable housing piece. And I think we spoke about this before, so I'm really curious about how much revenue we're going to have, your estimation of what might be foregone, which funds do you absorb that into? And I think, David, you spoke to that last time, but I'm sure you can remind me. And then if so, then do we have a view of what projects would be affected by this? And I'm also thinking about if the city pays for the ADUs, that also is, foregone. Revenue for impact fees?
Yep. Those are great questions. First, I don't know that the city has accounted for any foregone revenues in its revenue projections for affordable housing, and I think probably because it's such a small number of affordable housing units that we have seen historically and anticipate to see. David, you could correct me if I'm wrong. But again, I'll say that with the disclaimer of I'm not totally sure of how the impact fee revenue projections have been done. Next, the type of projects.
No, which funds absorb that? If there's a discount you have to make up, does it come from the general fund?
Ultimately, yes. I think it would come from, it would be the fund transfer from wherever there are available funds. I believe it would be from the general fund into the capital fund, either the parks or transportation capital funds. Yeah.
Got it. And we haven't taken this out of the budget. What I'm getting at is that if you could estimate that you could account for it, be prepared for it out of the budget. We haven't done anything like that, right?
We have not. And part of this effort of tightening up the code and the process that we have in administering a program is that we haven't done this in the past. So one of the realizations we have Heidi Greenwood of Ogden Murphy Wallace, who's one of Carrie's counterparts. She's here in the background, and she's helped us with this and identified some of the areas maybe where the city hasn't done such a good job in implementing impact fees over the years. So one of the things we're looking at is how do we tighten up the code and do a better job in implementing the program. So we will be working with finance after we get final direction, and in order to assess how to make those transfers And we can report out as part of the budgeting process to you what, if we were to forecast out what our anticipated rate of affordable housing development was in the city, remembering that we're not required to build the affordable housing. We have to provide the capacity to build it. Doesn't mean that it's all going to happen at once, but it could come at one point quickly, and we can't predict that necessarily, but we can do our best job forecasting that. So we could do that as part of the budget process, just so you're aware. However, as Evan said, it is historically a very low number of units that are being produced, so not really anything that registers of any real quantity, although there is real dollars at play. They're actual dollars.
Got it. And thanks, guys. I know it's hard to predict in the future because we don't know what that might be. So thank you for that.
Any other council member have any questions? Deputy Mayor.
I do, so you'll have to time me. I have just a couple questions. They're more maybe a little philosophical, but I understand that we are the first to implement the new law to scale, with the scale as part of the criteria or the calculation. And I'm wondering why Sammamish would want to be the first to blaze that trail when there's so much complication around it. It seems extremely complicated. I'm wondering what the other communities are dealing with. I also read in the report that we are allowed to use trip generation, so which to me is a far more direct and obvious way to measure the impact. So what would have we needed to do if we chose to use trip generation in order to create what would be qualified as a scalable calculation? And then last, just a question about your tear downs and rebuilds. Is that pretty easy to identify, or is that something where, you know, someone's leaving a foundation, so it's not a tear down? You know, is it one of those gray areas where it's kind of hard to figure it out?
Most commonly, tear downs in Sammamish are very clear to identify. Usually it's a much smaller home where they just scrape the whole site and build a much larger home, and they're not leaving a single wall. We do see along the shoreline, or in some other instances where there's a economic advantage to retaining a wall is usually the reason why. It's not usually because of our zoning rules or our impact fees. And very seldom do we see, I call it the Seattle effect, where I used to ride on the Burke Gilman and see homes being rebuilt. I'm riding on my bike and seeing an old wall left so that it wasn't a tear down rebuild. I know what you're saying. We don't normally see that as much here in Sammamish as I saw in Bellevue or as I've seen in other cities.
So as for the other two questions, I don't think we're necessarily the first. I sort of said that anecdotally from the perspective I have from our consultant. We are out in front. Heidi has worked with other cities and could correct me or list some that have probably gone before us. As far as trip generation versus per square foot versus bedroom count, we opted for square foot because it's really easy for staff to administer. It's something, it comes in, a square footage of a housing unit comes in as part of an application. It's a metric that we work with every day. Bedrooms felt tricky because you could, is that an office space or is that a bedroom? So in trip generation, I don't really understand the mechanics of it, and I could follow up with more detail from our consultant, but I think that would be of the three, the most difficult to sort of quantify from a staff's perspective. So square footage just felt like the most straightforward way to implement scaling impact fees.
I would just comment that trip generation there's an ITE manual that's used by the entire nation.
Councilmember Lamb.
I have a couple of questions. I remember the last time you were here, we had a discussion about impact fees potentially being lower in our sub-areas, such as town center and the neighborhood centers, to encourage construction there. lower impact fees, there. So I'm not sure where that discussion landed, because I would love to see that.
Yeah, I think we did speak with our consultant a bit more about the idea of different service areas. And their feedback right now is we don't really have enough multifamily units to create a legally defensible methodology for calculating impact fees in a specific service area. They did say that as the city matures and we build out, it could be something that's worth looking at. And one proposal you could consider as a group is, recommending an amendment to the report that add some language about, hey, when we do see development in the town center build out or future sub-area build outs, we assess the feasibility and practicality of a service area for impact fees to support that localized infrastructure. But right now, I think from our perspective, we're just not quite sophisticated enough as a city, and we don't quite have, I would say, the need to do that yet, but we could in the future.
I'll add one friendly amendment to what Evan said, and that is that at which point in the future the city takes on an amendment to an existing sub-area, or at which point the city decides to take on a new sub-area or new neighborhood center. We could, as part of that process, that would be the appropriate time to modify our impact fee structure to account for a new service area. Right now, we would simply be projecting or in theory, anticipating those areas, but we don't have enough complexity, and we are seeing most of our development continue to be in single family or in middle housing now in the form of townhomes. Although we do have some entitlements in town center related to multifamily, those have not moved forward, and we have not heard that they're planning to move forward with those anytime soon. So we do see other projects coming online related to middle housing, townhomes, and this fee structure does account for townhomes very well.
Okay. So what you're saying is that we'd have to have the sub-area planning in place, or at least like moving forward, in order to have a lower impact fees for those areas? Because I guess to me it seems like a chicken or the egg, right? You could have the lower fees now, and that may potentially encourage more people to build in town center.
We would need the justification for the lower fees by better assessing what infrastructure needs are for that specific sub-area or service area in order for us to amend the calculation or the formula to account for those separate or different inputs.
Okay. We received from a resident, Mr. Sickney, and I was looking at some of the numbers that the blended single-family transportation fees are lower than the multifamily. Can you, and he has a whole list of numbers that show that multifamily numbers are higher than single family percentage-wise. I don't know if you had a chance to look at his email, but I'd appreciate it if we could address that.
I did look, and if I'm remembering correctly, he was citing that for the maximum fee amounts on each parks and transportation, it would be quite a bit higher for multifamily. Mm-hmm. But I think it would be a safe assumption that multifamily units are probably not going to reach 3,500 square feet, which is the max amount. FCS provided some data that our 2 to 4 plexes in Sammamish on average are about 1,000 square feet. And in King County, they didn't have data for apartments in Sammamish, but in King County, new apartments on average are about 600 to 700 square feet. So you could assume that a new multifamily unit in Sammamish might fall within that range, 600 to 700 to 1,000 square feet. If you do the math, would ultimately result in a lower impact fee, because again, it's based on per square foot than the current rate. So in the scenario of maybe some luxury large condos, yes, they would pay more in impact fees, but it's a large unit and maybe it should pay more in impact fees.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council member have any clarifying questions? Okay, I see no other lights. I just want to clarify that the affordable housing range you've put in place doesn't encumber the city with any costs. That's outside of the we're clear there.
Right. Yeah. Heidi pointed that out, and the reductions we have now doesn't encumber the city with any costs. Yep.
Okay.
Although I do point out that it does indirectly, because projects are still required to provide for capacity and other improvements in the city. I want to make sure that we're being completely clear about that. Although it does not require us to make a fund transfer and to do the accounting related to the 20% minimum that we have to pay, there is still less money coming into the city related to supporting infrastructure improvements and investments. And I want to be clear about that.
Nope, that makes total sense. It's just if we'd be hit twice the other way around, where we'd lose the money and also have to transfer money, whereas this way we're just losing the fee. We're not paying, we're not transferring. Yeah,
That is correct.
I am clear on that one. And then of the different models you've had used, and you settled on the square footage, did you do a comparison of what that might look like as far as impact fee analysis, trips versus rooms versus square footage? I think it were the three options. Did you compare the different, or no?
Like what they would amount
What the
to.
impact fee would ultimately be if you
We didn't, and I think in large part because it would require FCS to have done the kind of a robust study of each to figure out what those would look like. We had a discussion early on with them of, which of the paths made most sense, and we as staff and through their consultation felt the square footage approach, again, because it's something we use every day in permitting and it's a very straightforward approach, made the most sense. But we didn't, to answer your question, no, we didn't go through each and look at what they would result in.
That makes sense. And while we are out front on this, other cities are in process. Are other cities going our direction as well? Like, what do you know of any other cities that are going our direction?
That's a good question. Heidi, not to put you on the spot, but you've looked at least at some other cities?
I'm helping one other city with their impact fee, and they're actually using trip generation. So I am confident there are other cities in the state that are using square footage or the bedroom, but the one other city that I'm most familiar with has chosen to go down the trip generation route.
Okay, perfect. That's the end of my questions, and it looks like Councilmember Treen, you've got your light up.
Thank you, Mayor. David, the comments that you were making were in reference to affordable housing that you wanted to make clear?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. And then, Heidi, if you don't mind, the legal and defensible aspect of the fees, because I'm always a little leery about when Sammamish Municipal Code is read, it can get a little confusing, or it can be interpreted multiple different ways. And then when we get in front of the hearing examiner, we walk in a situation where we're not in a strong position. So the question really is to you is that whether it's the square footage or the trip generation method of calculating the fees, is one of them, in your professional opinion, better than the other when it comes to defense?
No, I mean, the state law, and I've got it in front of me. The state law specifically says that the schedule or the fee schedule shall reflect the proportionate impact of new housing units, including multifamily and condominium units, based on the square footage, the number of bedrooms or trips generated in the housing unit, in order to produce a proportionately lower impact fee for smaller housing units. So it doesn't prefer one method over another.
Okay, thank you. That was my interpretation of it as well. So thank you. And then the follow-up question to that, then, for you maybe, David, is it actually this fee structure? Is it actually promoting smaller homes? Because that's the intent, I think, of the law. So by using this method and these fees, are we going to get smaller? Is it possible that we could get smaller homes?
I do think that it does help tip the scale to building smaller square footage, especially when paired up with our inclusionary affordable housing requirement and the exemption threshold there. That if you start to look at all of these things and how they stack up, we're really trying to drive market rate development to more what I call market rate affordable which is looking for homes in the 1,500 to 1,750 to 2,000 square foot range and upwards of that, that could be lower and higher. But as we start to see more of those types of units come online in the city, those are meant for people to stay here, age in place, new residents to move here, maybe younger residents who might want to raise a family here to get their starter home, those kind of things.
Yeah, so the only challenge then that I see in it, the whole thing, is it's a fee, which drives up the price.
It's a fee. However, the fee is intended to, in this case, with impact fees, address the infrastructure requirements that go along with bringing new units to the city.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I don't see any other lights on. If there are no other questions here for staff, we can go ahead and open the public hearing. Okay, I see no questions. We'll open the public hearing. And do we have any pre-registered public comments? Okay, Paul Stickney, you're up.
Hello, City Council members. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. I'd like to wave a magic wand, pause time, give me about half an hour to speak. Oh, I can't do that, can I? I can't cover everything that needs to be covered, but a lot of the stuff that I sent in can. And I'm going to start with a statement that I said before. I believe that we need to fix land use in our comp plan and then integrate that into the impact fee. But in speaking to a couple of the numbers, with the incomes that are in Sammamish and people sizing down and my networking with people, I'm hearing a lot of folks want 2,000 square foot condos or townhomes and larger. So smaller is lower price with these fees, and that's good. But I have a feeling the market rate that is truly needed and wanted is much larger on average, so there will be higher fees. But is that really an issue? Because as staff said, somebody is likely going to pay. I ran a couple numbers that you may find interesting. Doing a blended rate lowers impact fee costs for single families about 8% and raises impact fee for multifamily 150%. The thresholds for size, I'm not going to read all these, but let's talk transportation. A single family housing unit, compared to our past fees, a unit over 1,900 square feet pays more. And a single family home under 1,900 feet pays less. In multifamily, a unit over 1,170 square feet pays more than our old fees, and under pays less. But you've heard me talk about "and" several times. I didn't say to toss in the trash can or to throw all this work out like baby and the bathwater. I'm talking about "and." I want to suggest strongly that we end up with impact fee per square foot, and it's easy. The ITE manual is here. We have all these types of housing. I'm suggesting we have 8 impact fee rates, and before people throw their hands up and say it's impossible, it's simple. There's just 8 rates for single family homes, townhomes, cottages, and duplexes in a single family arena, and for 4plexes to 8plexes, 2- and 3-story buildings, 4-story buildings, and we probably will never have high rises, but we should have that category. There should be 3 variations for lower rates and affordable housing, all in my comments. I suggest you keep this open for 2 weeks and let's have some conversations.
Thank you for your comments, Paul. Would anyone else in the audience like to give public comment? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to look to the council to see if there's any issues with closing public hearing. I don't see any objections. Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing. I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah, I do have a comment.
okay. Deputy Mayor.
I would rather keep the public hearing open and continue to solicit feedback and then address it again. Sorry, guys, one more time. Whenever it's convenient, maybe the meeting that's in 2 weeks. I think it's just a lot. It's a lot to digest.
Okay, so we have an objection. So let's see. I did not talk about that. This is only my second public hearing, so and that's tonight. So at that point, then we can continue the public hearing. We don't need a motion to continue. I can just continue it to
That's
our next
correct.
city council meeting.
Your next regular council meeting in 2 weeks, correct?
Okay. Without any objections to that, we will continue this public hearing until, do we have the date handy?
I believe it would be the 19th, just adding 14 to 5.
Thank you. We'll continue this public hearing to May 19th. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, council, we will move on to, one moment here, let me confirm. I don't need to do anything to pause the public hearing officially. Okay.
No, it's being continued, so.
Thank you. Okay, I didn't know if there was a next step to that continued. Okay. Up next, we have city contracting overview.
Good evening, Council. For the record, Rachel Bianchi, Deputy City Manager. Can I also just say it's nice to be up here in the daylight? So, we just have a short overview for you all on contracts. I know there was some questions that came up a month or so ago about contracts and how it works. So this is really an opportunity for us to provide a high-level overview and for you all to provide some questions. I also want to give a shout out to our Public Works Director, Audrey Starcy, who I very liberally stole a lot of these really good-looking slides from. For some of you who were here a couple of years ago, back in 2023, she did a similar version of this presentation to sort of provide an overview. So the ones that are really fancy, you can just go, okay, that's an Audrey slide. So just a quick reminder, right? Sammamish was specifically organized as a contract city. Relying heavily on contracts allows the city some different things that other cities that don't rely. So it reduces staff costs, right? It allows for more flexibility. It allows us to scale, right? Depending on what's happening in the city. There are cities that do things in-house that we don't do. And up on the screen are some classic examples of that, right? So our staff are not out mowing and blowing the parks, right? Our recreation services are specifically contracted, and janitorial is another one. And there's plenty of other examples of that. We're going to talk about RCWs and state law and procurement manual and all that kind of stuff. So really, this is just an opportunity for you all to remember we work under a very specific and prescribed standard when it comes to contracts, whether it's state law or our own procurement manual, which goes even beyond some of that. So the presentation we're going to talk about, what we're going to really talk about today is really focus more on the professional services and what we call, you'll hear us say the A&E, right? The architectural and engineering services. But those really are the bulk of our contracts outside of, your major public works projects. Does that make sense? Please feel free, if it works for you, to just jump in if there's questions. I'll leave it to you, Mayor. So we have a few different kinds of contracts. We have what we'll call a project-based contract, right? So that is usually one department, right? One scope of work, very focused. So these are a couple of examples up on the board of recent ones that I know you all are aware of, right? Those are contracts we go through an RFP, RFQ process. We say, here's what we need. We need somebody to help us with solid waste procurement, right? We go through that process. The other kind are called on-call contracts, right? And this is the opportunity for us to say, at some point over the biennium, we are going to need X and Y service, right? There's a couple of examples up on the screen there. But it doesn't necessarily mean we know exactly what at that time, right? It also doesn't necessarily mean that there is a pot of money associated, a specific pot of money associated with all of those on-call contracts. And one I'll use that I think is really illustrative is geotech services, right? We have a variety of need for geotech services, whether or not it is reviewing a plan or something that has come in, right? Or for our own construction projects. So we may have an on-call contract for geotech services, right? But some of that budget might be in the George Davis Creek line item, right? Which is not in the general fund at all, right? Some of it could be in plan review because we need that plan, which then gets paid back, right, by the applicant, a good chunk of it, not always all of it, but a good chunk of it, right? But then some may be in our own budget because we're looking at, making a change to a park, right? And we need to be able to call someone in and say, hey, can you look at this from a geotechnical perspective? And we really need those on-call contracts because we shouldn't be having a geotech expert on staff, right? We don't need them all that much. So the other things I really want to emphasize for you is that, so we do the on-call contracts, can be large numbers, right? I think one of the specific questions we had was, well, who gets to decide, right, how those funds are spent? Well, you all decide if they are above the city manager's authority, and that's per state law, right? So if we get a task order and we say, hey, we need you, please, right, to allow us, we already have this contract, but we need you to be okay with us spending $50,000 or more on this, then you ultimately make that decision of the purse. Any questions on that?
Just on-call?
Or anything, I would say, contract related to date.
Just quick question. For on-call, so does this save us time with then renegotiating T's and C's and rates? Is that
100%? And we're actually,
because we can do that otherwise we will be burdened by T's and C's and rates every time we decide to fix a toilet, right?
Yep, and go ahead and this slide kind of provides, again, you can tell this is an Audrey slide, right? So this gives you an idea of sort of the process for a stormwater professional service on-call contract, an A&E contract. And in the box here are some of the benefits, right? One, it is a big reduction in staff time to have an on-call contract because anybody who's been through an RFP or an RFQ process, and we'll talk about that in a minute, knows how much work goes into that. So if we front load the on-call, right, we are saving a significant amount of staff time. I would say another thing is Sammamish, because we have such a long history of being a contract city, is we have some consultants on the on-call basis who know our city, who know our code. I can't explain how much benefit that is for all of us to be able to call someone up who has the scientific expertise or the engineering expertise, whatever it is, and who know where in our code to go to say, hey, provide us that information. So there are different additional benefits there, but absolutely, Councilmember Boyer, that is part of it.
And they're not on retainer, right?
They're not on retainer, they're on task order. So when we identify something, right, then we put out a task order. So a plumber is a great example of having an on-call contract, right? So unlike you or I who may own a home and maybe have a plumbing problem, we could call somebody up and say, whoever you are, A plus plumbing, because you're at the top of the, I'm old enough to remember the yellow pages, right? We could just call them if we had a plumbing problem. We can't do that as a city because of procurement laws, right? So moving on, super high level contracting process, right? Largely we go through what's either called an RFP or an RFQ, right? RFP is usually for project-based contracts, right? There's a specific scope, there's a specific fee, there's a specific deliverable. The RFQ is more used for the on-call contracts, right? When we're looking for a firm to give us their bona fides, right? They're all of that, so then we can then go ahead and score them. I want to be really clear that both of these processes are highly structured. There's a scoring rubric that we have to put out with the RFQ or RFP, and then we have to go ahead and score accordingly, right? So again, this is all about public bidding. This is all about fairness. This is all about equity, you know, that sort of thing. So, and just as I started us off, state law and the purchasing manual are what, you know, drives all of this. Guess who made this slide? So, and I am told that staff doesn't agree with this slide and it actually takes longer. So, but I did not actually update it to add additional hours. But this gives you an idea of how much time an RFP or an RFQ takes. And it really does take a long time. And I will add, having some experience in the private sector as well, it takes a long time on the other side as well, right? So being respectful to our partners in all of this is just, I just want to put that out there. We do a lot of great work with the private sector, and we should celebrate those partnerships more often. So I'm not going to belabor the point, but I think this drives it home. So we've gone through the process. We've done the scoring, right? We come out with the firm that is going to go to the next step, because there is no final step until you all approve the contract, right? Assuming it's over $50,000. So this is one of those things I think it's important that we're all on the same page about. So we go ahead and we do the scoring, and so we've gone through the process prescribed by state law and the process prescribed by our own procurement. We're coming to you with a yay or nay on the contract, right? What you don't have the ability to do, because it's outside of the process that we did, is to say, I don't like this firm, you should do that firm. I'm not saying you would. I just want to make sure we all understand the way that it works, right? So we also don't have the ability for you to say, well, I don't want you to do this widget, but I do want you to do this widget. You can say to us, this doesn't work, and we want you to go back, right, and do some additional work, or you can just simply say no, right? But you are limited because, again, we've gone on this journey of this public process. You are limited in what you can do at that point. Okay? Any more questions? Thank you again to Audrey.
Thank you very much. Council, do we have any questions? Deputy Mayor.
I'm sorry, am I the only one with questions tonight? I really just have a really easy question, I think. We hear all the time, we're a contract city, we're a contract city. At what point does it become more beneficial or more efficient for us to actually hire somebody versus being a contract city? And that's not like a real designation in our charter or something, is it? Is it, or it's just the best way to run a city when you don't have a need for a full-time employee?
It is the way that this city was purposefully created, right, is my understanding. I wasn't here in 1999, but it was the way that it was set out. But I will say, and this may be an extreme, but I think it's a very classic example, is a police department is a very expensive thing to run, very expensive. And it's not just the police officers or the gear, but you don't have staff who are needing to go through all of the public records requests associated with police officers, which is significant, right? You are not in a position where you have to either have a mutual aid agreement with another jurisdiction, or that sort of thing, because those specialty operations that we don't need very often are available to us on our contract, right? So that's one example, right? I would say another one is, within plan review, permitting, things like that. The ebb and flow of permitting, as you all know as residents, is very significant. And so if you were to bring staff on to deal with the high points, You're not going to need them in the low points, and so what are you going to do? Which that's not a place I think anybody wants to go, right? But it keeps that cost down. It really does. We're a service organization at the end of the day, and services are provided by people, and people are expensive, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just look at it like I forget how many contracts there were, but it was a lot that were on call. And so it just seems like that's something that I guess as the manager, the city manager would be monitored for. At what point would it be better to just hire someone versus the contracts? And I get police and that's different. But there's a lot of other stuff going on in an on-call contract.
And we brought in traffic lights, right? They were contract. We brought them in as staff. We're going to have a discussion probably about whether or not that is working out at the end of the day. But so there has been times when Sammamish has said, that might not work anymore and we're going to switch this. But I think at this point, I wouldn't advocate for hiring a plumber, right?
Oh, no.
Right. That would be, so I've just used that as an example of the necessity of the on-call contracts, so we move forward. And sorry, Mr. City Manager, anything?
Just a quick, Deputy Mayor, I appreciate the question. I think, one of the other pieces is if, like for instance, the traffic management piece, we weren't getting the level of service that we were looking for. And so that was brought in-house. Again, it was before my time or Rachel's, but it was brought in-house to try to get to the level of service that the city wanted. And at the same time, we brought a full-time mechanic on a few years back because it was a level of service issue about maintaining all of our fleet. As a way to be able to do that in real time when we need, especially during emergencies. We were having a hard time with our on-call contracts. So it's a little bit of ebb and flow. I will say one of the other pieces about on-calls is, and I know you and Councilmember Trina may appreciate this, but we had a geotech on-call when we had the slide. Called on a Saturday afternoon and they were out there at 8 a.m. Sunday morning to look at the site, and that is one of the things that is nice about having, but we don't have a need for a specific geotech on staff. We don't have enough work for that, and sometimes there are different technical components that different firms specialize in, and so we have the ability to find the right one when we need it, and then when we don't, then we don't pay for it.
Yeah, great. For people who wonder that the landslide was not on our property, it was next door.
Councilmember Lamb.
So mine's more of a comment, Rachel. 3 years ago, the former council, we added new language to the RFP and RFQ process to include, the contract itself to include encouraging women and minority-owned businesses to apply for the RFPs and RFQs. And I just think that was a really great addition that we did. It's important that our city is equitable and inclusive when it comes to our city contracts. So I very much appreciate that we, at that time, were trying to fulfill our DEI goals.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other lights up, so I've got a couple questions. And this kind of piggybacks onto what the Deputy Mayor was asking, but mine is, what is the process in which we determine a review of a contract to move to an FTE? So how do we know during the budget cycle that we should look at janitorial, or we should look at some things you just inherently know? We're calling this person all the time. The budget is 500,000 and FTE is 200. So what is that set process the city uses to make a determination every budget cycle?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. What I would say is that's not we don't regularly review that. It comes up if there is council interest, we will take a look at it, or if we are finding that we are not getting what we need, then we would do an internal review and bring a proposal to council. As you might expect, tried really hard not to do that unless we have a significant need, because in part, to the point the Deputy City Manager made previously, once employees are on board, then you're locked into that cost, and rightly so, moving forward. And so we really try to balance that component with using a contract that then we can adjust up or down depending on the need. And so, we always are reviewing sort of everything in general, but I would say that there's not a specific process around what that component that you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I certainly get wanting to be careful about adding an FD because that is absolutely a long-term cost, right? What my question is curious about. At what point do you decide that long-term cost has more value to the city than the contract is, and we don't have it, so I won't belabor the point, but.
I will just add, if I could, Mayor, that our colleagues on the leadership team are always looking at stuff like that, right? And if somebody came and said, we think that you could save money by doing this, we would have that discussion. That is not our experience. Our experience is the contracts save the city money at the end of the day.
And I am not disagreeing that is the likely outcome in like probably 99% of scenarios. But if someone comes to me and asks me that question of how do you know that, or why are we not, like I can't point till we go through a process or we have this definitive way of determining, other than it might feel this way to leadership, and so then we're going to review it, which I get, that's reasonable. There's only so much time in creating a process that isn't going to help. Like, I was just asking the question. I'm not mandating or going to ask you to create one here. My next question is, during the budget cycle, one of the challenges we had when we had asked about what contracts the city has was they were all kind of hard to pull out. And I know the new system will make it easier to do. Outside of the on-call contracts, I would be interested in during this budget process to understand the contracts we do have where we're outlaying money to, and I know it might be part of the program-based budgeting, but I am interested in seeing those and making a determination perhaps on some of them that we don't want them. So that's just, I don't know that I'm not asking a question, I'm just stating a preference for the budget cycle.
And I will channel your finance director to say we're all very excited, but no more than her, about the new financial system that is going to allow a lot more of that look into that.
Okay, that's all the questions I have, or statements. Any other council member? Okay, there are no lights on. That was
Thank you.
Pretty easy. Thank you very much for putting that together for us. Okay, council, up next we have council, I was looking at the time. Up next we have council reports, and I'll start, Councilmember Treen.
Threw me on the bus there,
Sorry, you can take we have time. You can take a moment.
Can I have just a second here,
Yep,
just
absolutely.
to look at my calendar here to let you know that the farmers market starts tomorrow. I will be late for the grand opening, but I am planning on attending that, and then looking forward to. We'll be going next Tuesday to the George Davis pre-construction celebration there at 11 o'clock. And so that's coming up. And then next week we'll also have EF&R, but I could report on that next Tuesday. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lamb?
So I also plan on being at the farmers market tomorrow for the ribbon cutting. That's at 4 o'clock. And I have a solid waste advisory committee meeting on Friday. We will be discussing the proposed King County solid waste rate increases. And there will be a discussion on FIFA World Cup solid waste preparations in the Seattle area.
Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, I'm going to join Councilmember Treen at the Lamb at the farmers market, as well as the ribbon cutting. Thanks.
Do you want to talk to ETP? On Friday, the letter.
Yeah, there's the letter that we wrote or that you reviewed went through with the edits that you saw, and I believe we're going to do a vote on that Friday morning. ETP online, it was multi-city endorsement of 4-line.
Okay, thank you. I sent that email out this morning or yesterday, recently.
with the information on it related to ETP. And I sent an email out about the AWC's CELI program. I don't know if there's a way you say that out loud, but
Waselli.
Thank you. I would like to be part of this cohort, but we need to put together a group of council members. I'm looking to council members on this council who probably have not gone through that yet, and then I know several have, and potentially reaching out to Redmond or Issaquah. We have until Thursday to put our team together and our thoughts on what we'd like to do. If anyone is interested, please let me know. And that's it, Councilmember Lamb. Or sorry, Deputy Mayor.
I'll be at the ribbon. Oh, need a mic. I'll be at the ribbon cutting as well, so look forward to seeing you guys all there. I just wanted to point out a Kokanee work group activity that's going on. They've been looking at the Issaquah High School number 4 field being composed of tire treads, you know, the rubber toxic stuff that can be used, and we are asking them to change that to a cork surface to protect the Laughing Jacobs Creek, which is going to be impacted by their storm drainage. So that letter is going to be put out sometime in the next couple of weeks. Drafts are circulating. And then I did already forward the PIC agenda to the rest of the group, and the Sound Cities Association in that meeting is going to be looking at a response to the sewer rates being proposed by King County. They're significant. They're going up 12%, and our local rates are also going up, so it is going to be a significant amount for sewer and water cost in the future years, and I think they've got doubling by 2033. So it's a lot. That's just for King County. So those rates we're asking, Sound Cities is asking that they be evaluated more holistically and not just look at King County by itself, but also consider what's happening in the local areas, because we're all getting nailed.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
I'm sure I'll be at the ribbon cutting also. Just to let everyone know, I attended last Wednesday and Thursday as part of Raya 8 on their grant committee, and so we were scoring all kinds of, there was like 17 different projects in, so we kind of scored everything. So those announcements will be coming soon, and it's all part of the salmon recovery project. And then yesterday, I am the alternate for K4C. Councilmember Stewart's out of town, and I sent a quick YouTube video to all of you. It's about a program that King County are running. It's called Jumpstart, where it's called Jumpstart Clean Energy Workforce Development Program. And what they're doing is they're hiring young people, or helps get young people started in their career in the clean energy and the skilled trades. And also they've added another component on project management also. It's been hugely successful. They have about a 60% placement rate. So they do full-time internships and part-time internships. They pay about $25 an hour. They're really trying to start to work with cities who are working on small climate action projects where the hiring of an intern would be written into the contract. And Jumpstart can help with that. They have templates for those contracts. And then out of these internships come full-time paying jobs. So they're seeing great success in it, and they would really like to see it grow and continue in getting young people into the trades and into things like HVAC and solar energy, all that kind of thing, and into these green jobs. So I just thought that was a really interesting, and also when they are part of the contract, and when you do hire a Jumpstart employee, King County pay for them, and they supply them with all of their work gear and all that kind of thing. So there really is very little cost to, say, if a city decided to hire somebody from the Jumpstart program, there's really no cost to them except all the experience the young person generates from it. So just want to let you guys know about that, and please take a look at that quick little video. It's really informative and very hopeful. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. You all collectively stole my thunder about the farmers market. But looking forward to seeing everyone out on what looks to be like a very nice day to kick off the farmers market. So excited for that to happen out on the plaza right outside of City Hall. And I want to thank everyone who came out for our annual Earth Day event. It was well attended, and I want to recognize all the great work of our staff and partners who made it such a success, and for those from the council who were able to come out and join us. So with that, Mayor, back to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, up next do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's been moved and
Seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Look at that.
Nay.
To make sure that we could communicate together if we had that and the emergency happened at an